At least you could manage to be on time after your mother goes to all the trouble to prepare a fine meal. It's only common courtesy, Chuck.
Howdy everyone, I'm John Kenific, and welcome to my channel where I talk about expanding your confidence, creativity, and career. Today I want to talk about how to know if your art is good. Now, it's fair to say that we may feel this more intensely when we first venture out because we're not a proven entity. But I would also say that based on talking with other creatives as well as my own feelings that most artists look to improve, so constantly questioning your skills is part of the artistic experience. Where we may differ from other types of people in other types of careers is in the subjective nature of our work. An athlete can more easily measure progress in strength and speed as opposed to an artist trying to broaden their color palette to convey a certain emotion. And in researching a formal consensus on what we should strive for in creating good art, it seems that although there are common elements that run throughout, no definitive list exists. So I offer the three that I use: emotional, conceptual, and technical. And I approach my art as having to resonate with all three. Naturally, emotional with the heart, conceptual with the mind, and technical as a skilled draftsperson. And art being art, these three can and will very easily cross into each other. So let's start where the idea starts, the emotional. For me, the emotional is the most important as well as the toughest to wrangle. As the most essential element, if there's no heart behind a piece, it's just an exercise in a given medium. This phase is also the one that is most connected to your personality, what we have to say, the beliefs that we hold, and the stories that we tell. So learning to improve this area for the sake of your art isn't necessarily as tangible as the other two categories, but it doesn't mean that you can't. Emotion is where it all begins, but how we see the world, of course, isn't analyzed in the same way that our concepts or execution are. And the only thing I would mention in expanding the emotional part of our work is to broaden your worldview. This is the fuel that feeds the whole process, creates more varied experiences, and expands your feelings for artistic expression. The next phase is the conceptual, the idea behind your work, how your logical mind resolves feeling. The conceptual is the clever mind that works between the technical and emotional to choreograph the movement of both to its greatest effect. If we skew too much to the technical, we can risk a rigidness in our work, where the emotional left unchecked can create something too on the nose, lacking nuance and the opportunity for interpretation. So to better understand the conceptual is to embrace the balance of the inner philosopher and marketer. Your inner philosopher is constantly looking to tell your story in the most authentic, thought-provoking, and original, remember we are artists, original way possible. At the same time, the inner marketer is trying to find a way to present your work in a way that'll get your audience's attention. How do you create enough mystery, intrigue, beauty, or dissonance to draw a viewer in and want to experience what you have to say? To broaden the conceptual abilities, you have to slightly pump the brakes on the raw emotion behind an idea and give it context for it to connect. In addition to backloading your art with emotion, intellectual depth is needed to balance your feelings with purpose. Learning about the things you want to say, the vocabulary of your concepts, and refining your ideas is important to give your concept solid ground. Unfortunately, a byproduct of our world today is that artists, and all people for that matter, are gradually becoming more isolated and more siloed in their work, ideas, and in their lives. So just like the emotional phase, you broaden your conceptual inspiration by expanding your experience and worldview and interacting within it. Always experiencing, always learning. You can't artistically comment on a world that you're not living in. The last phase is the technical, the worker bee, the skilled labor brought in to materialize the ideas of the emotional and conceptual while they're out getting coffee. The best thing about technical is that it's the easiest area to see progress. It's on the front lines and in most cases gets all the praise when things go right and naturally the ridicule when things go wrong. And even for the most introverted of us, this is where we want the world to sit up and take notice. Improving your technical ability is also the most straightforward. through formal education or self-learning, constantly practicing the fundamentals of drawing, color theory, composition, balance, understanding light and form. These are all the building blocks where we learn our craft. This is where practice most visibly leads to progress. Now, the one part of the process that lives in all three that I haven't mentioned is your taste level. Whether you call it taste level, artistic sensibilities, or style, this is how you want to present your idea through all three phases. And this is where I find my greatest victories and disappointments. I've always judged my artwork as being good when my initial idea goes through the emotional, conceptual, and technical and is delivered just as I had imagined it. And if there's an internal battle inside the artist, I find that for me, it lies between your taste level and your ability to communicate that. So that's how an artist may judge their own work. But of course, as artists, we want to know in no uncertain terms, do others think my art is good? Well, if you work in the fine arts, which holds your viewpoint front and center, there's less attention given to the general public, a little less, and your work is often positioned as a new perspective, where people are more willing to critique your work based on what you have to say. And for that reason, getting feedback on the question, is my art good, gets judged in a slightly different way than the jobbing illustrator or animator. That's not to say that the fine artist is free from having to please anyone. Patrons who commission works and the focus of some boards and galleries can often drive a fine artist to tailor pieces or entire shows to a certain focus, but their work is still usually chosen for its unique perspective. Now, on the opposite end of the spectrum is the commercial artist, where a creative team can sometimes make decisions on your work and edit it down to the last pixel. And although this is where most of our agita comes from, it can also be our biggest opportunity to have real feedback on the work that we're creating. Even our rejected work will provide honest insight to potential areas of improvement, given that learning our shortcomings on a job is never fun. So finding a mentor is a great way to get honest feedback from a trusted source. Also, within a trusted local or online community where you feel safe to put your babies up for criticism is a great way to gauge how good your artwork is. And entering your work into competitions is also a great way to get a more unbiased, honest critique of your work. And for all the reasons that you might guess, going to friends and family in the beginning may not be the best plan. There's always a layer of bias, good and bad, that those closest to you may incorporate into their opinions that they're not even aware of. So I would hold off on that one for a little bit. In finding out if your art is good, aside from the three categories that we talked about, you have to be self-aware and balance two things, and this can be a little tricky. The first is a willingness to fail. Carl Jung's work with the shadow self talks about how the negative side that we repress also holds much of our potential. So embracing only the light of our creative side, we can become stagnant in the comfort of our limitations by never putting our talents to the test. So letting our shadow take a chance and be uncomfortable and uncertain of our talent is usually the way to take our art to the next level. The second is to truly believe that your art is good. This is the most grounded approach there is. When we create art, we have to remember that it's on us to get our audience up to speed. When someone looks at your work, it's based on everything they've ever seen, not your work. If they don't understand it, it's not their fault. It's up to us to find our audience. And one last point. I know that we're all bored to death with the inspirational stories of the number of times that great artists, great masters were rejected. We get it, right? But let it sink in for a minute. It's not fiction. It's the creative life of someone just like you, living a life with all the disappointments and victories you experience. And the fact that history has proven them doesn't change that. Bottom line is, I couldn't tell you if my artwork is good. I just keep doing it. That's all I have. And remember, art is a never-ending pursuit, kind of like folding a fitted sheet. Thanks so much for watching. See you in the next video. Bye.